But our culture is much more. It is absolutely much more. And it's crazy that I'm having this topic because I saw a very interesting post, on the gram. And it was this young boy who, before I play it, I'm going to let you know I didn't like his tone. But so what? A lot of y'all don't like my tone, but I like his content. Go, Young King.
Black people who grew up with money. Why do y'all hate black people who grew up with money? Let me make one thing clear. I grew up in a $500,000 house. I went to private school. I graduated from one of the top universities in the country. My job, you couldn't get it if you wanted to. My car note is more than your rent, no cosign. I mean, I can go on for days. But the moral of the story is, why would I want to relate or try to fit in with a lifestyle that I do not come from? Y'all don't think it's crazy that you equate blackness with poverty? And this is exactly why you have all these suburban kids running around here acting like they got it out the mud, like they were struggling, because you sit there and shame them for being from the South.
So yeah, my man's. I didn't grow up in a house that big. I spent some time in private school, my first 3 years of school, then my last 4 years, my undergraduate, I went to private school. Um, my car note is not more than your rent. It's not, or your mortgage, whatever you have. It's not. It's fairly affordable. Um, but I didn't get it out of the mud. I got it out of the books, and nobody will ever, 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 ever make me feel some type of way because I got it out of the books. I didn't get it out of the mud. I much rather learn about Black Wall Street than the block any day. I was much more interested in Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X than I ever was of Tukey Williams. You understand what I'm saying? Or Freeway Ricky Ross. You get where I'm coming from. But that doesn't mean I'm any more or less black than you are. Because our experience is multifaceted. I've talked about the black agenda is multidimensional. So when I come on here and I ask you what is the culture, I tell you, bro, it's American culture. Not the same as white American culture, but it's American culture. And it's different things. It's new slaves. It's Kanye talking about broke N-word racism versus rich N-word racism. And guess what? Somewhere in between, there's middle class racism. And some of it's black on black. Not all black on black crime gets documented. Not all black on black crime gets documented because sometimes if somebody didn't get it out the mud, you think they're less black than you are. But it's like, hold on. Excuse me? And that's a crime against humanity. That's a crime against black people because you decide that this person didn't go through the struggles that you went through. They had a bit more prosperous life. They had more successful parents than you, that they're less black than you. Get out of here. But that goes back to equating success and to whiteness. It goes back to equating academia to whiteness. It goes back to a self-loathing behavior because you can't see that black people are capable of much more than what we hold ourselves to. Now, some of us as a people, we say, oh no, bro, I'm more than a conqueror. But a lot of us want to go back to where we came from and go back to our roots and say, that is black culture. No, that is your black culture. Everybody black didn't come from the same thing. We're not cut from the same cloth. And that's not a bad thing. Y'all want to talk about the cloth. I'm cut from this cloth. I cut from that cloth. I was listening to Joe Budden talk on his podcast, his Saturday podcast, and they were making fun of Ice because Ice had a ride to school. He rode his bike to school. He couldn't go to the bodegas until he was a certain age. He didn't have to go through all that stuff they went through. He listened to his parents. He made good grades. And they like, Joe, like, I don't talk to people who did like that. Well, Joe, you're a high school dropout. Yes, you were successful. Yes, you were articulate. Yes, like you made it work for you. But just because you made that work does not mean that people are less than because they did not do that. Just because somebody doesn't make their road like more difficult doesn't mean they're less than. Just because somebody did not experience what you experienced, did not rebel the way that you rebelled, did not live the way that you live, means that they're less than. It just means they have a different perspective. We all have different perspectives. Some perspectives are more relatable than others, and some aren't relatable. And guess what? There are some poor people who grew up in the hood who have a perspective I can't relate to. I can't relate to that perspective. I can relate to struggling, not having everything that you want. I can't relate to worried about where my next meal's coming from. I can't relate to not knowing if I'm gonna be in this house again in the morning. I can't relate to that. But that doesn't mean that I can't relate to being treated differently because of the color of my skin. Doesn't mean that I can't relate to wanting something and not being able to get it because I don't have the means. That doesn't mean that I can't relate to, I don't know, walking into a room that you deserve to be in, that you've earned your way into, and somebody asking you, like, are you lost? Are you sure? You know how many times I've been in meetings at work and I'm the only person who knows what I'm talking about, and somebody goes, well, are you sure? Well, if I'm not sure, what the hell do you know that can like disprove what I just said? Nothing. Okay, then why the hell are you asking me questions? We all experience different things, but just because somebody doesn't struggle the way that you struggle doesn't mean that their struggle's not valid. It doesn't mean that their perspective isn't valid. No, I can't speak to life in the streets, and I don't want to. I don't want my kids to be able to. I grew up in the country on land. I want my kids to grow up in either the country on land or in the suburbs. Why? Because I work damn hard so that they can. So, black people, our culture is much more than criminal culture. We're more than that. Our culture is diverse, it's multifaceted, it's multi layered. Some of us are here and some of us are there. But no matter where we are, oftentimes we experience some of the same issues. But just because somebody hasn't gone through what you went through doesn't mean their experience isn't valid. And just because somebody went through more than you went through doesn't mean that their experience makes them more black. Nah, look at my skin color. Some light skinned people who've done some more black things than I'll ever do. But when they see me, they see a nigga.